From my home to yours, welcome to EMS C-Level. Today's guest is Jason Spera, co-founder and CEO of Aegis Software. Before we get into the questions, Jason, can you give me a 2-minute introduction to you and to Aegis?
Aegis is a provider of manufacturing execution systems, large-scale factory control and automation Industry 4.0 solutions that's actually built on an IoT backend. So for machine connectivity, data analysis, gathering, contextualization, and so forth. And we've been doing that actually since 1997 now.
Okay, and you're scaled to roughly how many factories around the world?
Actually, there's over now 2,200 sites using some form of our software, because our solutions range from smaller tools used by engineering that convert CAD and BOM into machine programs and documentation, all the way up to entire multi-factory enterprise MES systems. So across all of those usage cases, it's over 2,200 sites.
Yeah, and that's a number that's grown every time we speak. It's growing quite steadily, isn't it? And it's inside and outside of the EMS industry. Yeah. So let's start with exploring the last couple of months, kind of from Chinese New Year on. What are the challenges you've seen? And from there, we'll explore a little bit of how you've overcome those and mitigated those.
Sure. And I think there are challenges that most everybody's been grappling with, of course. We, being a multinational firm as we are, with operations in Asia, a couple in offices in Europe and so forth, we had a bit of forewarning of the magnitude of this problem that was approaching. First with our Asian operations, it's a bit different seeing the news and then hearing from your colleagues what's going on. And then it struck Italy, as we all know, and our European colleagues were filling us in on the reality of that. So we did have a bit, I think maybe many corporations in our industry are multinational, so they benefited from that forewarning as well. But we did, and we were able to prepare. So I'm very thankful that actually on March 20th, that was when actually in the space of an hour over the evening, our IT people switched our entire enterprise over to remote operations, like home phones. Our IP phones all went home, all our content sharing and video platforms, and basically we shut all our offices down in one evening, and it really went without a hiccup, which I thought was real credit to our people. But we are, of course, a software company, so and I was gratified because as I speak to customers, existing customers thereafter, many of them actually made a comment that they did not detect an interruption in service or even ongoing deployment rollout. So our transition to remote operations went rather well, and that was kind of the first challenge we had to overcome, like many did. But what we are seeing, and as I said, I think everybody's grappling with this, is of course all business leadership, all business people are trying to deal with the uncertainty as to the end of this road, when the return to normalcy will happen. And we're all, as we are, trying to come up with ways to protect our business so we can continue servicing our customers and so forth. So that's what we've all been striving for at Aegis, certainly. But we're gratified, though, that I actually am a little surprised that the great majority of our manufacturing customers are still operating. Yes, there are some that have shuttered their factories, but it isn't. The shutdown is perhaps not as widespread as I thought it might have been. So that was good news.
Yeah, and when I look at your customers, there are certain things that they have needed to get them through this situation and to mitigate some of the disruption. It started with supply disruption, we've had demand disruption, and we've obviously had workplace disruption. And for me, I think digital transformation is key to having the visibility to be able to respond to disruptions. But there's even more to it than that. How do you think they have been able to respond to their challenges as a result of having not necessarily FactoryLogix specifically, but a more digitally transformed manufacturing ecosystem?
Well, that's actually a great question, because there's a couple case examples. I mean, what we're seeing, particularly in electronics manufacturing and people going up to the box build level, is switching that which they're building. Many of them have been, in some cases, due to the acts, they've been pressed into service, so to speak, of building ventilators and so forth. So you had someone who really wasn't accustomed to something like that. That's where digitization actually does become very valuable, because suddenly now you have to deploy totally new processes, totally new documentation, routes and so forth. Everything is new and has to be done very rapidly. And in the old ways with paper and manual systems and so forth, that's a pretty ponderous situation. It just can't respond. We've actually had 2 customers that were in that situation where they make nothing. Traditionally, they make absolutely nothing like a ventilator, and now they are. And what we've done is actually we've offered to our customer base surge licensing for free. So if you are being pressed into a situation where you have to ramp up production of ventilators or any system that will assist this for everybody, we are actually providing free licenses for them to scale, and some have taken advantage of that.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And when I look at that flexibility, initially when I saw the Defense Production Act, it was driving me crazy, because they were asking factories that make pickup trucks to make ventilators. And knowing the EMS industry as well as we do, Jason, your first thought is these people have amazing capacity. They're used to line changeovers. You've built your business. We've built this kind of ecosystem on flexibility and agility, the ability to get a new product out really quickly. Let's get those guys doing that. And I was really gratified to see a press release that came out of Philips recently that mentioned Jabil and Flex in the title of the press release. And I thought, well, we are in unique times, because you see two fiercely competitive companies collaborating with a customer to get stuff out. So that flexibility is really important. And you say most of the factories are still open. I guess those are partially those with essential products, but also those that are in geographies that are reopening. And we're seeing some of that in China, in South Korea, in different parts of Asia now. Do you think those countries are kind of an example for how we can reopen stuff elsewhere, particularly in Europe, where a huge amount of capacity is shut down?
I think so. I mean, obviously they're going to use the models and look at what's going on elsewhere. But what I do see, and in fact, we just had an internal meeting about this. I think because the States is still, the biggest economy in the world, I think there's an interesting effect going on right now, is that even the regions that are, I guess you could say, stabilizing to a degree, are, I think, looking to the States as to when we are going to stabilize. So I think there might be a latency of confidence until the whole world sees a stabilization.
Yeah, and I think that stabilization, again, needs to come in all those areas, doesn't it? It's supply, it's demand, it's what's going to happen with the economy. Is it a V-shaped dip? Is it a W? Is it a different shape? It's very hard to predict. When I look at the ongoing situation, I've been trying to split it into 3 areas. So we've got this urgent situation now, and what you're doing with surge licensing and all those kind of things, and what your customers are able to do in terms of pivoting is really valuable and key to that. The next stage we've got is how to assist through a recovery. And then there's this third future state of a post-COVID-19 world where perhaps digital transformation is accelerated and people are starting to rethink supply chains and manufacturing ecosystems. How do you see those kind of timing areas differing for you and your business and your customer base?
Well, I think it is, we do actually look at it as the immediate, medium, and long in our internal planning. And I think that's a great way you put it. And you're right, the surge licensing, all of that is a reactionary thing to the issues going on immediately. But in the medium term, and actually we're doing it right now, is we immediately said, wait, we can't just be managing through the crisis of our customers' problems and so forth.
Yeah.
We have to look forward to what happens when the return to normalcy occurs. So we actually have an array of programs at the company right now where it's designed for just that. it's interesting. I guess you could say one of the positive business byproducts of this situation is we are discovering that, well, wait, why didn't we always do this? For example, we've invented ways of projecting trial software, literally without any presence or any, complete remote projection of trial software. We're re-examining and rebuilding some of the ways we do trainings. I mentioned how we actually, obviously, we had deployments going on when the restrictions hit. We're continuing those remotely. So, and we're also looking at some internal things that maybe we wouldn't have had enough time to focus on in terms of corporate improvement. So that's all the medium term stuff. And we've shifted our mentality a little bit away from trying to promote our solutions. I mean, obviously everybody still has to do that, but we think it's bad form to go into a situation like this as a vendor and try to promote your product to people who are, maybe they're struggling with their situation as a corporation, themselves. So we've shifted a lot of our work towards knowledge. We think that if we can present, we've actually increased our webinar output on technical topics tremendously, because we think that's value we can add if people can, maybe not act upon any of it now, but when the normalcy, returns, they can. And to the longer term, we think once normalcy does return, corporations like ours are going to look at it and say, well, wait a minute, why weren't we doing these things remote? The customer was happy with it. We've been amazed at how customers are very accommodating of video conferences for things like, sales discussions and so forth, more than we would have ever imagined before. So I think long-term people, we believe, will emerge a better company. And so far, our customers seem to be of the same opinion about their corporations.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely the opportunity to do that. And I'm excited by what you say about that focus on education and information for your customers, because I think if you can deliver those two things of education and clear measurable value, return on investment of the product, then the features and those elements become secondary. They're obviously important and you've got to talk about them and promote them. But if the customers understand and you do get this digital transformation dividend at the end of this, then it's that rising tide that brings up all boats. So I think that's really valuable. And I'm seeing a lot more people reassess that, and I think there's a sense that there are additional haves and have-nots in this situation, and the haves have clearly been more agile and done better, particularly on the supply chain side of things, where you've needed to switch business. Just switching gear to some of the lighter stuff. You've got a whole team in lockdown. There's a lot of people. How are you keeping everybody motivated? How are you getting everybody together, and maybe injecting a bit of humor into your lives rather than just email traffic?
We the first thing we mandated actually was that all of our conferences would be video, and you can imagine there are certain parties that don't take to that. I have to say there are a couple holdouts that I have yet to see in one of the video panes who simply refuse to use it, but we felt that would keep the culture together. And I was saying in another meeting recently that I think I've seen more of our European and Asian colleagues than I had previously, because we're using video constantly. That's one way. Another way that I hope we're doing a good job is updates. I think in this environment, everybody, not just our company, but everybody, uncertainty and lack of information is probably the biggest stressor people have. So we're doing more internal webinars. The managing directors of different regions are doing question and answer sessions, a lot of online updates of what we're doing and so forth. And I think that helps keep the culture together and engaged. That helps a lot. And another thing that I tend to think has helped is I think people need a mission. It's not just survival. And I think you asked the question earlier about our install base. And what I shared with our company in an update was, with 2,200 factory sites around the world using our system, we are very much, maybe a little bit peripherally, but we're in the critical supply chains around the world. So it isn't just a matter of what we're doing for our own company. We have a role to play. We have to keep our efficiency and our service and our performance for our customers up, for a greater good than would normally be the case. So I think that's actually something that is more engaging, actually, to keep at it and try to improve and do our best.
Yeah, and I think no, I think that's huge, and I think, you know, having a mission, feeling involved in the fight against COVID-19 is really, really valuable. And you mentioned, you know, leadership doing these, what I would consider virtual town halls, or whatever you want to call them. I think they're hugely valuable, and it's a very important time for leaders to step up. And, you know, you get to the end of this, and you'll really understand which of the leaders did and what leadership is all about. And I think that's something that I've seen in a lot of companies that I've been talking to, and a lot of companies I've worked with. And that constant communication, constant, not just reassurance, but kind of open honestness. And look, times are tough, but we're doing this, this, and this. This is what's going on. This is the impact, because there's just a lot of fear out there. So dealing with that is a big challenge. So you're stuck at home. So you get to the end of this busy day with all these video conferences. You don't get to go out to a bar and watch some sport, and you don't get to go out to dinner. So what are you doing with yourself at home? What are you binging on Netflix or Stan or any of those online channels?
That's a good question. Actually, if I were to take the share of non-work time while stuck at home, I've probably been putting more of my time towards the house projects that never get done normally. So, you know, exciting things like organization and some minor repairs and things like that. But while I do think I'm probably one of the last people on the planet that hasn't seen Tiger King, I did delve back into like Westworld and Leftovers, and I actually, as ashamed as I am to admit it, I went back into some real legacy, pretty bad sci-fi that I hadn't seen in years. So yeah, stuff that normally I wouldn't have time or inclination to do. I think we're all
yeah. So going back to your engineer days and having a bit of a geek fest and watching some of those old movies, that's fun. Last thing before we go, Jason, what advice would you give to your peers? What would you say to other CEOs, either in the manufacturing space or the service space? What's really important right now?
Well, I think in this situation, I would not presume to give my peers any advice. I think that what I'm seeing is that every leader that I speak with, this is all new for everybody. And I believe everybody's trying to do what they can for their customers and their company and their people as best they can. I do think, though, if I were to say one thing, I have seen, and I don't know if you've seen this as well, but I do think that approaching your market and your customers from the salesy perspective in this climate, I think, is off-putting. I've seen some things that I thought, were just, I think that the mental approach, we actually have an internal mantra that was written down, is that if we're doing something right now that does not convey some value to the customer to get them through this period, rather than trying to sell something to them, I think that's a mistake. And so our focus right now is to just do what we can, because we are all in the same boat. And they're, the customers are a reason for our existence, and that's our focus. So, I mean, I guess that's what we're doing. I imagine a lot of people are as well.
Yeah, and that gives you that. For me, that's all about relevance. If you're not relevant right now, just talking about, I don't know, a widget on the next version is going to get lost in the news. But it also doesn't seem like we're all pulling in the same direction. And I think that's hugely important at the moment. And actually, as an industry, it does feel like we're doing that, and I'm really gratified to see that. And when I look at some of the solutions that people are coming up with and some of the ways they're diverting manufacturing, it actually impresses me. It's something that's really nice to see, and that spirit of collaboration that we talked about before is strong. So that's all very, very encouraging. Jason, thanks so much for your time and your candor. It's been a real pleasure to chat to you. Thank you to anyone that's listened and watched. And until next time on EMS at Sea Level, thank you.
Thank you, Phil.